The following podcast is by Dr. Shawn Weiss, President of Senior Health and Wellness Group on the Answers for Elders Radio Network. And welcome back, everyone, to Answers for Elders Radio. And we are here with Dr. Shawn Weiss, who is a licensed physical therapist and founder and president of the Senior Health and Wellness Group, which is an educational consulting company that helps educate and helps families navigate through their later life care. And I have known Dr. Weiss for a very long time, and I'm thrilled that you were here. And we are spending this hour talking about various aspects of, later life and what we're dealing with right now. And we spent our first segment talking a lot about just summer safety, which I think is a big deal. But this segment, Shawn, I'm so glad you're back because we're flipping over and talking about family caregivers. And I don't think we could ever have too much content on this. I think it's one of the most important topics we could ever address. So I'm so glad that you're here, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I was really excited to be here.
Well, we're excited. So tell us a little bit about through this pandemic and, what's going on, what's happening with family caregivers these days.
Oh my goodness. And just like you said, this could not be a more important topic right now than it has been in the last year and a half. And we see it daily. Caregivers, not just talking about caregivers in the medical community, because certainly our hospital workers, nurses, resident care aides, nursing home, assisted living, home health clinicians have certainly experienced burnout, but really the focus on families and family caregivers who maybe have had to start taking a new role and take care of mom or dad or grandma or grandpa during this COVID pandemic. And we really are seeing a lot of burnout, not just physical burnout, but emotional and mental exhaustion.
Very much so.
We're seeing it all over, and it's such an important topic. It really is.
It is.
People are, maybe have had to move a loved one into their home. People have taken on new roles in addition to their jobs. And, maybe those demands are just they're daunting. They're overwhelming to these caregivers. They might not have the knowledge or the background or the support system to take on these roles. And, just the pressure of wanting to take good care and promote good health and happiness on their loved ones. So it's just, if you can imagine the pressure that has been on these caregivers during this pandemic, it's just been amazing.
Well, and I think, I can relate to everything that you say, because as you know, I took care of my mother for the last 6 years of her life. And the expectations that I put on myself were very unrealistic. I see it, hindsight's always 20/20, but when you're in the thick of it, you don't necessarily realize how you're overcommitting, how you're burning yourself out, how your whole life is going to hell around you. Excuse my French.
Yes.
But it's like you don't have, I think, real awareness from a independent perspective of where, what your perspective should be on your life. And I think so often what I have learned with family caregivers is they are often the quote unquote sacrificial lamb of the family. It's somebody that, she'll take care of it. And usually it's a woman. So I'm using that as an intentional thing. And then, the rest of the family, just, they go on and do their lives normally. And there's resentment that builds up in families. So there's this whole other piece that happens within that person. And oftentimes a family caregiver doesn't know how to set boundaries because, again, they've been used to taking everything on. And so I know that there's a lot of listeners that listen to our show that absolutely are taking care of loved ones, and they are amazing, and they're angels, and they are probably one of my greatest passions, that we do advocate for them, and that you guys do have a right to have a life. And you shouldn't feel guilty for it.
You're exactly right. And you look at the symptoms of caregiver burnout, and it's all around us right now. Much like the symptoms of anxiety and depression, they're very similar symptoms. I mean, you look at some of our caregivers, who have developed resentment and irritability, and they're withdrawing from family and friends. They're not taking care of their own health. They're not sleeping. They are using alcohol or medications. And, certainly we want to look for people who just need to talk to somebody, whether that's
Mhm.
professionally or find a friend or a loved one to communicate with.
Mhm.
And uh, it's a daunting task, and you're not alone. And you need to really, I've always said, you cannot take care of somebody else if you are not taking care of yourself.
Easier said than done, though,
It totally
because
is.
oftentimes I will say, you need to learn to say no, you need to set boundaries, you need to do all
Hmm.
these things. And they look at me and they say, yeah, but I don't have anybody else to take care of my mom. You say all these things and it's one thing.
Hmm.
So, I can appreciate that to every single person that's listening to this show
Yeah.
that may feel, a bit overwhelmed, and we hear you.
Hmm.
And find there are communities out there, support groups, there are, and believe me, reach out to us on Answers for Elders. We're happy to you know to give you guys some resources and things like that of various organizations that your loved one should never ever dominate your life, because
Yeah.
that will happen very not it will be detrimental to your life over the long term, and I'm living proof of that. So just know
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing that. And you have to be able to set your own boundaries. You have to know what your physical and
Mhm,
emotional
mhm,
limits are,
mhm,
and what's best for your family member.
mhm.
And, set a time for yourself, talk to a professional, make sure that you're staying healthy and exercising and eating correctly. All of these things are so, so critical. Find somebody that you trust. Like you
Right.
said, trusting somebody and not taking the whole burden on yourself.
And that's
Delegating tasks. I mean, there's
yeah.
just the list goes on and on. And you're right. All your local, I mean, across the country, your local area on aging offices have, links, and your community centers and your senior centers
Right.
have links for support groups
Correct.
for caregivers, and they're
Or
so beneficial.
churches.
Church,
Church
absolutely.
groups have great resources. So
Hmm.
again, reach out to your community. That we are here. And I think the other thing that's really important is that it's perfectly acceptable to set a schedule. I know that was probably, Sean, one of my hardest things that I ever did with my mom, because my mom was very demanding. We had moved her down here to assisted living. She knew nobody, right? So I
Hmm.
felt this overwhelming need that I had to be there every day. And
Right.
one of the things that when she went into assisted living, because I was so emotionally wrapped up in it, I
Mhm.
was going like every day. And of course, I was juggling a full-time
Yep.
job and all of
Yep.
those things. But here's what happened. I'm very grateful. The nurse of the assisted living community said, Suzanne, I want you to go home and I want you to let your mother stay here for a week and do not visit. And that was 1 week. It was like, oh my gosh, she needs to adjust. She
Yes.
needs to know that you're
Yes.
okay and it's okay. Well, and it's okay for you to call her. It's okay
Hmm.
for you to check in on her, but I don't want you to visit. And I was
Right.
shocked. But you
Yes.
know what it taught me? She was just fine at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happened, I thought, and then the next thing was, you know what? I am going to set a schedule.
Yeah.
And so I did set a schedule. And my mom, for her to just say, I need some things in the store. Great, mom. I'll do that when I come see you on Tuesday.
Yeah, and that's
Oh,
absolutely so
okay.
critical, and that makes such a world of difference for the both the
Yeah.
older dog and the family member. And
Yeah.
utilize outside services too.
Mhm.
That's another important thing, whether it's non-medical
Huge.
services or skilled home health, that gives you a break. Let the
Absolutely.
professionals come in, sitters, somebody that can come with help with cooking and
Mhm.
housekeeping, and give you a break to get out of the house and go run errands, simple
Well,
things
and
like
you
that.
mentioned home health, which is
Mhm.
so important. There's the good news. Medicare pays for home health,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Mhm.
And if your loved one is a fall risk, you should definitely talk to your loved one's physician and have home health authorized. It is
Mhm.
costs you nothing, and help them with their balance, help them so that they're not a fall risk in their
Yeah.
house.
And
And
not,
those
yeah,
are services that are available to right now that costs you nothing. It is
right.
a Medicare
Yes.
expense that
And think about, you couple the fact that you're taking care of somebody, their activity levels are down. So not only
yeah.
do you want to increase their physical activity, but the amount of seniors that have had a cognitive decline
Mhm.
is so significant, and it's heartbreaking, honestly. Home health helps with that. We have, occupational therapy come in, and establish baselines and educate the loved ones on how to transition and make these adjustments in their care.
Yeah.
Skilled and non-skilled home health are just incredibly valuable resources right now.
Yeah. And I will say also, just a side note is that we need to be mindful to prevent caregiver
Hmm.
burnout. And that a part of it is you may
Yep.
not be feeling burned out right now, but there's a lot of things that
Yep.
can happen in your life. Again, life could spin out of control tomorrow and you don't realize it. Burnout just doesn't happen all of a sudden. It's an
Mhm.
overtime scenario. And so, Shawn, would you share with us a little bit about what we can do to prevent that?
Right. And you want to start by just setting yourself up for success, not just setting up your loved one for success, but you
Mhm.
personally. You want to have a routine. You want
Mhm.
to take care of your health first and foremost. So, exercising and eating well. Know who your contacts are. Who can you
Mhm.
help delegate tasks to? Do you have other loved ones? Do you have a son or a daughter that could help? A granddaughter that can come in and sit with grandma for a few hours a week? Start
Mhm.
making a schedule. Like you said, that I can't stress that enough, of knowing and planning ahead during your week, of time for yourself and time for your loved one,
Mhm.
and allowing as many people, that you can feel comfortable doing right now into your space, so that you're not taking the whole brunt of that yourself.
And
Yeah,
not to be, cliche, but it does take a village, everyone. You cannot
absolutely.
do it on your own. And if anybody thinks that that you
Yep.
can, they're
Yep.
wrong.
Right.
Your life has just as much value as anyone else's. And
Mhm.
sadly, a lot of times caregivers forget that. So
Right.
we are very, very excited to be talking to Dr. Shawn Weiss this hour.
Mhm.
And Shawn, you're going to be right back right after this, and we're going to talk about fall prevention. We kind of touched on it this hour, but we're going to talk a lot about balance, mobility, and how to keep yourself safe in your home. Right back right after this. We would like to thank you for listening to this podcast by Dr. Shawn Weiss, CEO of Senior Health and Wellness Group, focusing on wellness and prevention strategies for seniors. As a fall prevention specialist, Dr. Weiss provides family support and education to keep your loved ones safe. You can learn more by visiting her website at www.seniorhealthandwellness.org.